Hello, and welcome to Mornings at the Allotment. It's May 30th as I film this, so I've kept my May tour for the very last minute. The sky is blue, and temperatures are finally picking up, and we're even expecting overnight temperatures over 10 degrees starting at about the middle of the week. Before I show you the progress of my allotment in May, I want to welcome almost 50 new subscribers that have joined me in about the past week. Many of you joined after watching me plant my horribly leggy tomatoes or after my shed video. So I want to thank Richard and Paul and Jane Kelly from Jane's Allotment for the shout out and for recommending the tomato video. And I want to thank Rue from Rue's Life for the shed collaboration. I really had a lot of fun doing it. But before I start the tour, I want to thank each and every one of my currently 125 subscribers. Whether you were the first to join or only joined in the past week, thank you for showing me that you enjoy my videos and that you want to see more of them. As we enter the garden, we finally have some life going on in my partner's herb bed. The sage and the chives and the thyme are feeding the insects, mostly bees, and they in turn are feeding the sand lizards that live back there because they like stone and they like the security of the compost pile. That's actually the compost pile we use for weeds. It stays in there much longer than in the regular compost pile. So it's safe in there for them because there's lots of cats around the site. Then we come to the covered tomato bed, and those tomatoes are really doing pretty well now that the sun has come out. And I didn't think they'd do much growing, but they've been doing fine, and most of them look pretty sturdy. So yeah, I'm hopeful that I can actually continue with these. And I've left in one row of the broad beans in the back because they're already setting pods, and that part back there isn't covered, so I didn't want to put tomatoes all the way to the edge. And then by the time the broad beans come out, we can walk across the back of the bed to reach the tomatoes more easily. On this side, in the raised beds, we have the carrots, last year's carrots, starting to go to flower. The garlic is doing pretty well. And over here, the chives are doing great, and basically most of the radishes are out. And unfortunately, the carrots that were interplanted between the radishes never came up, or if they did come up, they were eaten by slugs. So yeah, I'm going to have to re-sow something in there. Quite a bit has changed in our greenhouse since the last tour. It's now almost completely a summer greenhouse. We still have the kohlrabi down here, and then I have the first 3 cucumbers planted at the side here, and some beetroot in front of them. And most of our cucumbers go outside, but these 3 plants are a new variety I'm trying, and they're for the greenhouse, so I just put them back there. Then we have the strawberries. You can see there's some red ones in there that I haven't harvested yet. They're doing really well. Yeah. We have 2 cauliflowers left in the greenhouse. The first one has headed up enough that we can harvest it pretty much any time now. Probably going to have to harvest by next weekend, if not before. And then this one is a bit behind, which is actually perfect for another week after that. And the mange tout are doing really well. I think by tomorrow I'm going to have enough of a harvest that we can maybe put them in a stir fry or something. I'm going to leave them just a day longer. Yeah, and then on this side, my daughter and her friend just planted the chili peppers yesterday. So we have 2 habaneros, 2 cayenne, 2 jalapeno, and 2 that are called lila luzzi. I'm not sure if the leaves are actually supposed to be this dark, but they're the only plants that have leaves this purple, so I don't think it's just that they're not happy with their environment. I think they're actually supposed to be like this. Yeah, and then we have the rest of the stuff that needs planting out and needs watering, apparently. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to do that after I stop filming. And down here is where I'm going to be planting sugar baby watermelon for inside the greenhouse. The other one is going to go outside. So this is the very narrow pathway behind the tomato structure and greenhouse. And to the right is where we're growing our sweet potatoes and some beans. And this is our structure for the uchikikuri, and I've planted one over there and a second one on this side and a third one, because I've never been lucky, the slugs have always got them first, a third one here that we're going to trellis up the fence. And this next to the barbecue here, so you can see where this is. This is where we're going to grow our comfrey, but the comfrey is still so small that I've planted all the lettuce in front of it. And yeah, some plants that are hardening off. These really need to go in the ground very soon. Some of them are already outgrowing their pots quite a bit, so I really probably going to get them in today. Yeah, nothing new going on back there. Our shed, if you've seen the shed video, you know what's in there. If not, go ahead and check it out. It's very different from UK allotment sheds. And since I filmed the shed video, I've actually done a bit to change this. So this is usually where I sit. And we've put a shelf back there because when we eat here in the evenings, we just like to have something. By then it's in the shade where we can store all the food. And these are still hardening off. It's one of my chili peppers and a pepper plant given to me by a plot neighbor, and an aubergine and a ground cherry, and these are cucamelons. So I still have them in the shade mostly. They only get a couple of hours of sun. I'm going to move them later on. Yeah, so this is the view from our patio area. Most of our potatoes are doing pretty well. I've found a few brown spots on some of them that I need to take a closer look at to make sure it's not blight. Could just be sunburn as well. 2 of the buckets aren't doing anything, so I'm going to empty those out. Unfortunately, they're 2 of the supermarket potatoes from the potato challenge that Erica from Erica's Little Welsh Garden is doing this year. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to win that challenge. Just planted some herbs up there, some lovage and St. John's wort, and well, that's a dahlia. Yeah, so the rest of the potatoes are doing something. Not all of them. Some of them are main crop, so they're going to take a while longer. Yeah. This is where it gets a bit complicated. My daughter's herb and mixed vegetable garden. So mainly this is going to be for our winter crops, because on the other side, the straight beds that we have will always be for tomatoes and peppers and aubergines and things like that, summer crops. So I'm going to want to cover them in compost in the winter and maybe plant some spinach or lamb's lettuce in there. But other than that, this is where we're going to put the brassicas and the leeks and all that type of thing. So yeah, no straight lines. Right in the middle here, that structure, the clothes horse. This is actually where we're going to trellis our cucumbers. So you can see here we've put the first 3 out. And we try to protect them against the slugs by putting these metal rings around the bottoms, and they're just roughly cut so they have rough edges and the slugs don't usually go over that. So we just have to make sure that none of the leaves trail on the ground. Right now I'm standing right behind our shed, and this is where we grow our raspberries. So yeah, it's kind of hard to film without filming the neighbors' gardens, but you get the idea. Lots of raspberry plants trellised up this structure. And we have one more raspberry plant here, and a bramble, no thorns. It's lovely. We just have the one plant for now, but we're going to have more next year. And this is where we have our bench. And yes, it's right next to the compost pile, but actually that really doesn't bother us. We put most of our home waste, compost food in a different area, so it doesn't really smell. So as we walk back, we have some onions in here, but we've also already planted out the leeks here. I don't know if you can see with all the weeds in there, and you really need to do some weeding in this bed. And some red cabbage. And this bed also needs emptying out. We have some radicchio left in here from last year that we've harvested 3 or 4 times, I think. And it keeps coming back, but now I think it's over and done with. And yeah, those 2 are still doing okay. Lettuce and another radicchio. And this is our garlic bed, or actually, well, it's not, but this is where we had our garlic. And I don't know if you remember, this is where we had spinach. I just took out the spinach yesterday. And behind the garlic, put in some beans. So they're bush growing variety. They don't need any structure. I plant them close enough so that they can support each other. Next to that, we have the broad beans, the ones that are actually in there for the harvest. And this is interesting. I saw that yesterday. In between the broad beans, we have some celeriac that's doing pretty well, really growing well, growing nicely. And then here behind the onions, we have another bed that has just the celeriac in it. That was planted the same day as the other, but is a lot smaller. So apparently being shaded or being protected from the wind really helped the plants in between the broad beans. Now in this raised bed, we have the beetroot that I hope this year will come to something, because last year was not a good beetroot year. And then this is where we planted the, I still don't know how to pronounce it, salsify or salsify. I've read both. I've heard both from other garden YouTubers. So if you know, please put that in the comments. I'd really like to pronounce it correctly. What's definitely coming up is the radishes. And Liz Zorab from Byther Farm told me that salsify looks like grass when it comes up. So maybe what I'm seeing in between there is what I'm hoping for, but we won't know until it gets a bit bigger. So I'm now behind that bed, and our fig tree is finally showing some growth, so yay for that. We thought we had lost it in this very cold winter because it hadn't been planted for too long. It's still a very young tree. Yeah, and back there, I just spotted 2 more strawberries that look like they're ready to be harvested before the slugs get them. Here we have some brassicas, we have some kohlrabi, and then, well, what are supposed to be white cabbage, and this is actually really funny. Look, sorry about the shade. We have a little cauliflower. It almost has no leaves, and the cauliflower is probably about the size of my thumbnail. Yeah. So here the slugs have been busy. They've just been eating everything except the lettuce. The lettuce is looking great. Even the one that touches the ground is doing absolutely brilliant. They just like the brassicas. So yeah. It doesn't really matter though, because these were some experimental new varieties. I would have liked to see how they grow, but well, we'll just take what we can get. The cold frame is also doing pretty well. The brassicas in here haven't been eaten by slugs, but we have something in the ground that's eating the roots of our salads in here. So yeah, different situation. And bindweed wherever. So if you see bindweed, yeah, you don't have to tell me. I collect it every day or every other day. This is actually pretty bad in here as well. And the one fennel, and this is actually where I'm going to be putting my second sugar baby watermelon. So just a quick overview of the tomato bed. All the tomatoes have survived, and I'll do another tomato video in about a month or so when they've had actual sun. Right now I'm just glad that I haven't lost any of them. And in this bed I planted all the spare peppers and chili peppers. Now my main chili peppers are in the greenhouse, as you've seen, and I have all my main pepper plants still at home hardening off on the balcony, but I put all the spares in here to see if any of them would survive, and yeah, maybe I'll leave some of them in. This is where I have the only 2 fennel currently in the ground, but I have some more in the greenhouse, so I'll be able to plant more in probably a week or 2. And over there, not looking too great, my aubergines, I just had to put them out. They were getting too big for their pots, and we've still had cold temperatures, but it looks like they've all survived, and they're putting on new growth. So yeah, I'm hopeful that they'll make it. Along the edge, along the path, I put in some ground cherries, and then this bed, you know from my asparagus video, this is where I have my peas, and then the asparagus in the back. And some of the asparagus looked like it had died back, and I already thought I had a big failure on my hands, but it is putting on some new growth. Let me see if I can just find some for you. Yeah, here you can see. It's putting on new growth. So yeah, it looks like the roots are fine, and in the end that's what we need. We don't need the foliage this year, we need the roots to grow. So as long as it's producing new leaves, that will strengthen the roots for us. Yeah, and the peas are looking good. I've already found the first pods here. If you remember, this is our self-sowing bed. I've just taken out some of the self-sown lettuce because it was just too much, so what was there didn't have space to grow. And I just planted some chard in here. It's still very tiny, but so far no slug damage. Yeah, can barely tell where it is here. Some yellow and red chard. And finally, our final raised bed, which is mainly for parsnips, and I have found quite a few parsnips in between the radishes. So yeah, they're doing fine. I'll be taking out the rest of the radishes and then seeing whether any of the carrots have germinated, and if not, the carrot rows will be resown with main crop carrots. And then finally, we do have a couple more empty pots here. The 2 largest of my ground cherry plants. Yes, I think we've overdone it, but I'm trying to figure out how to grow them best. So I have them in the ground, in pots, and in different locations just to see. And these are my first 2 summer squash. They're actually, let me see, white patisson, I think. Yes, they're white patisson, both of them. Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore the sunshine, but it's not even noon and it's already 20 degrees and our garden is basically in full sun. So I'm going to head home, have some lunch, edit this video so you have something to watch, and then I'll be back later this afternoon to do some more planting and to just sit on the patio, maybe have a little barbecue and enjoy the fruit of all our hard labor. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you did, do give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.